This is Geki, the brave leader. This is Goshi, the stoic intellect. This is Don, courageous but brash. This is Boy, the optimist. This is Mei, the girl. Together, Kyoryu Sentai, Zyuranger. And this is a gnome. This is a gnome's grandson. He says another Zyuranger is still in stasis, but the gnome and Barza don't think awakening him is a good idea. Only they'd bother to say why, because guess what, it's not. Meet Bry, the powerful Dragon Ranger. He wants the Zyurangers dead. Why? Well, it turns out that Geki isn't the real prince of the Yamato tribe. He and Bry were both sons of the Black Knight whom the Yamato king killed in combat, after having adopted Geki as his own son. The older Bry was then left to avenge the death of his evil father. As if that wasn't bad enough, Bry also wanted to be a Zyuranger, and somehow he became one. But by the time he did, Bandora had been defeated and everybody had gone home. So now he was even more pissed off. The only way to find the Zyurangers and get his revenge was by going into stasis himself, and upon his release, he makes life a living hell for the Zyurangers, especially for Geki, who, now that he knows his true past, is desperate to get some quality bonding time with his murderous, vengeful psychopath of an older brother. Bry even briefly joins Bandora's forces, but the alliance doesn't stick, presumably because he can't stand the nightly musical numbers, and he once again sets out on his own. But then he immediately meets Clotho, the spirit of life. This little KKK reject has good news and bad news. The good news, the Zyusoken, used to summon your own guardian beast, Dragon Caesar. The bad news, you actually died in a cave-in while you were asleep. I brought you back to life, but now your life force is tied to this candle. As long as you stay in this little pocket dimension, the lapseless room I made for you, you'll be fine. But whenever you go out into the real world, the candle will burn down, and when it burns down completely, you die. But Barai's revenge can't be restrained by a candle. Unfortunately, he loses. Also unfortunately, Daijujin then commands Geki to kill Barai to bring justice to those Barai killed in his rampage. But Geki refuses, Barai comes to his senses, and Daijujin gives him a mulligan. To celebrate, they do some epic posing, and Barai joins the team. But Barai doesn't tell the others about this tiny little problem he has with death, meaning he doesn't exactly spend much time with the others. But when the other Zyurangers are getting their asses kicked, Barai hears his brother's cries and comes in at the last second to save the day, vanishing as mysteriously as he appears. But even these short trips take their toll on the candle. Clotho eventually informs the other Zyurangers, and they desperately look for ways to fix Barai's problem. And after a while, Barai starts having weird dreams. He gets in a rickshaw only to be told it's taking him to the land of the dead. Along the way, he rides past a bench on which a little boy sits. Assuming the boy is destined to die, he sets out to find him. Doing his own take on Make-A-Wish, Barai even lets him ride on Dragon Caesar. Of course, this is stupid, as he immediately gets caught up in Bandora's next monster attack, and the child is mortally wounded. To make matters worse, Bandora finds the location of the lapseless room and destroys it, leaving Barai with very little time and no safe haven. Goshi and Don, meanwhile, have left to retrieve a sacred elixir, Barai's last hope. Unfortunately, after fighting their way through, Clotho informs them that since Barai is living on borrowed time already, nothing can save him. However, she gives them the elixir anyway. The remaining Zyurangers combine Daijujin and Dragon Caesar with King Brachion, the last guardian beast, to create Ultimate Daijujin and defeat Dora Gansaku. They just barely manage to, though, as Barai runs out of time. Transported to a beach, he has just enough time to give a heartfelt goodbye to Geki and pass on his powers before dying in his brother's arms. However, Don and Goshi are able to use the elixir to save the little boy's life, so Barai can take some satisfaction as he now rides past an empty bench. In case you haven't noticed, an overarching theme with Barai's story is, well, death. It hangs over his head through his entire storyline, and ultimately he is unable to prevent it. From what I've heard, the fans were forced to go through a similar journey. They were allowed to vote whether or not Barai managed to live, and living actually won out, but they killed him off anyway to teach the kids that sometimes heroes just die. Damn. But while Japan was busy unfairly hammering life's lessons into children, America preferred their kids to not know that death even exists, which presented a problem in crafting Barai's Power Ranger counterpart Tommy, the Green Ranger. So how did they do it? Tommy's introduced as a new kid in Angel Grove. He's Jason's equal in martial arts as well as a match for Kimberly's heart. Rita somehow has her own power coin and decides to brainwash Tommy and give it to him to combat the other Rangers. But of course they're missing the long-lost brother and death plots. So cue 5 episodes of the Rangers standing around waiting for the command center to be fixed, battles that go nowhere and end for no reason, a pretty decent duel between a captured Jason and Goldar, and evil Tommy chewing the scenery so much that you're frankly amazed it takes the main characters 4 whole episodes to figure out that he's the Green Ranger. It's an overall good storyline, downright epic for little kids, but it's really heavily padded, and the storyline they were trying to tell could easily have been told better in 2 parts, not 5. The Rangers are ultimately triumphant in breaking Rita's spell, Tommy joins the group, and they celebrate by doing some epic posing. Well, they made it through that pretty well, but now there's a problem. Tommy's not in his own little pocket dimension, and he's not dying. He's in school and is a permanent fixture alongside the other characters. But his Sentai footage is limited to showing up at the last minute. What to do? 2 words. Contrived coincidences. Tommy forgets something and runs off. He loses his communicator. He's captured by putties who steal his morpher. He's knocked out in the first act and has to recover in the command center. Hey, you do what you gotta do. And while this should have made Tommy look like a complete dumbass, he still pulled it off as he still came in to save the day and it gave him that lone wolf persona. And kids loved him. He had weapons and armor that the other Rangers didn't have. He, in conjunction with Titanus, expanded the overall arsenal and scope, and even though American footage of the Green Ranger had some flimsy, pathetic cloth shield, it did lessen his impact. But the good times couldn't last forever. Just like Barai's days were numbered, so too were Tommy's. His remaining stock footage melted away just like that candle, and when it came time to get rid of him, Power Rangers borrowed that candle idea from Zyuranger. Only instead of bringing about death, it was a candle that Rita created to steal Tommy's powers back. It was said that he touched it while under Rita's spell. It loses points for being pulled out of their asses rather than being properly set up in advance, as well as for the logic bomb. If she had this candle, why wait until now to use it? Jason once again goes one-on-one with Goldar in an attempt to get the candle, but he has to abort the mission to create Ultrazord and save Tommy from Rita's Cyclops monster. Which is a bit odd, since as you remember, Goshi and Don were both absent from this battle in the original, yet the others were still able to form Ultimate Daijujin without them. But I can accept the different rules as they actually make more sense in Power Rangers. They win the day, but it's too late for Tommy. But Zordon has a trump card. If Tommy passes his powers to another Ranger, at least Rita won't be able to reclaim them. So he chooses Jason as his successor, and I guess the others only cared about him as a Ranger since they immediately stopped hanging out with him afterwards, and he disappears from the show entirely with no explanation. It wasn't quite as epic as Barai's end, but it was still pretty engaging. This was one of the first episodes I ever saw, and it's what got me hooked. So the story continued on with only 5 Rangers again, but it was cool because Geki/Jason occasionally decked himself out in the Golden Shield. I actually wish this had been a permanent addition. It looked really good on him and it would have shown him as the true successor. Plus, I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want to use it. The status quo continues for a while, but then Dai Satan returns Kai to Bandora. Her transformation had actually caused her to forget about her lost son all this time. Bandora pulls out all the stops, and musical numbers, in a final attempt to take over the world. Kai pilots his own mech, Dora Talos, and almost conquers the Zyurangers. But after a quest to retrieve their guardian beast, with a little pep talk from Barai's spirit, the heroes are triumphant and Dai Satan is killed. Kai is mortally wounded and dies in his mother's arms. The Zyurangers rush in to finish the job, but Bandora's mourning had caused her to lose her powers as a witch. Daijujin seals her and her minions away and flings them out into space. But they're happy because Grifazar and Lami have a freakish hybrid monster baby. Yes, in the original series these two were married. With their task complete, the Zyurangers leave the last 2 newly hatched dinosaurs in the hands of some local children, because that can't possibly go wrong. And Barza then leads them to the land of the gods to be with their guardian beasts. And so the book literally closes on Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. As for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the details of the story are as usual removed. In this version, Goldar pilots Cyclopsis. It's only after an intense 2-part battle that the Power Rangers are victorious, with Goldar escaping the fiery death that Kai endured. And even though it's essentially no different from any other time they've beaten Rita, it is treated with quite a bit of finality. The city throws a celebration for the Power Rangers, Tom even makes a cameo appearance, and it ends with Zordon giving the team a choice to remain Power Rangers or return to their normal lives. Of course they decide to continue being Power Rangers. While the story moved in a somewhat arbitrary fashion, it served as a good emotional conclusion. It could be assumed that Rita and her minions finally gave up and that peace reigned, but it also left open the possibility of future adventures. After 40 episodes, Power Rangers had exhausted the 50 episodes of Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger, and its first season came to a thrilling and successful close. Except that it totally didn't! What part of unprecedented cash cow did you not understand? Saban couldn't pass up the opportunity to capitalize on it. Due to almost daily airings, it had taken only 2 months to run the entire first season. And what now? Months upon months of reruns? Not if they had anything to say about it. It was time to start putting some of that huge mountain of cash from action figure revenues to work. So they contacted Japan and actually got them to film new Zyuranger action footage, specifically for new episodes of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Fans generally dubbed this footage Zyu 2. So starting the following February, they were able to expand the fight with Rita Repulsa by another 20 episodes. The best part for Saban is that they were no longer bound, well, loosely bound, to the Zyuranger storyline. With that in mind, it's astonishing that they waited 9 episodes to do this. In a 2-parter, the villains kidnap the Power Rangers' parents and force the Rangers to hand over their power coins in exchange. But bad guys being bad, they don't hold up their end of the bargain. Fortunately, they're also stupid because they completely neglect to take Jason's Dragonzord coin. You know, the one that belonged to them in the first place. With no other choice, the Rangers summon Tommy, and after a temporary power boost from Zordon, he's able to once again become the Green Ranger and steal back the other power coins. Afterwards, despite the danger of Zordon's boost being only a temporary fix, Tommy leaps at the chance to permanently rejoin the team. Zyu, too, did take a few creative liberties with the property, but Season 1 ultimately ended on a fairly unspectacular episode. It did contain an underwater fight, and the Black Ranger got to briefly wear the Dragon Shield, but it certainly didn't attempt to wrap anything up like the original Doomsday finale had. Maybe Saban simply didn't see the point, as it was obvious that there would be a Season 2. Zyu 2 is more important for what it meant to the budding franchise. It gave them the freedom to start taking storylines in their own direction, for better or worse. They also began filming a bit more of their own costume footage than they had in the original batch of episodes. They were fast on their way to establishing Mighty Morphin Power Rangers as an entirely separate entity, only loosely connected to the source material. And in Season 2, they'd be forced to stretch that connection much, much farther.